The alphabet soup agencies go at it. Brian Quintenz, who is he? Where is he? What is he? And NASDAQ tries to convince us that tokenizing is the only game in town. All that and more coming up on Block and Order. Welcome to Block and Order, your one-stop legal shop for all things digital assets. I'm your host, Kyle Lawrence, and with me, as always, he's a good boy. He's not wearing white after Labor Day, Mr. Moish Peltz.
That's right, Kyle. After Labor Day, and we're back in blue because we're ready to rip and run here.
I think I made that same joke last year. What's the genesis?
Did you?
Of that? I may have. I don't know.
The Labor Day, like no white after thing?
Yeah.
I assume like it's only for summer and now we're serious people again.
I feel like it's one of these old world Wimbledon kinds of things. And when does it reset? Is it New Year's? Like, can I wear white on Thanksgiving? Like, what happens?
No, you have to wait till spring again, I think.
I can't wear white at all? That's ridiculous.
No, not even a little bit.
This goes back to the episode a couple months ago where we talked about arcane laws, and I talked about how you can't tie your shoes on the sidewalk in Nashville, which is true. But This is nonsense. I don't think it's a law, but it doesn't make it less stupid.
It might be a law somehow. Maybe it's not a law. It might be like a regulation at the country club.
Well, I think one of our users can source that for us and let us know. I personally would greatly appreciate it because I want to know.
That's right. If there's any viewers out there that know about the white wear on which days and whether it's just guidance or some formal regulation somewhere, please let us know.
I wonder, somewhere in this world, that is a law.
You're endlessly curious. Right.
Well, Moish, we got a lot of stuff to unpack today. Of course, on Block and Order, we're very excited to have everybody back and watching and listening. So why don't you kick us off with our main topic du jour, the SEC CFTC joint statement.
That's right. Our first topic is the SEC and CFTC, as you previewed, have issued a joint statement. Both SEC Chair Paul Atkins and CFTC Acting Chair Carolyn Pham highlighted a regulatory harmonization priorities, including topics such as having 24/7 markets, events contracts like Polymarket, perpetual futures, portfolio margining, innovation exemptions, DeFi, and announced a joint roundtable on September 29th that we're now all looking forward to. And relatedly, there was a staff joint statement issued this past week, inviting filings from regulated venues to facilitate trading of certain spot crypto asset products, signaling staff readiness. So here we go. A lot of focus by both the SEC and CFTC, the two big regulators on the block, on crypto. And that's continuing not just through election day and the first 100 days, but here we are, September 2025. And like, this is still like a huge part of the focus of both of these agencies.
Moish, how long do you think until we get some actual written rulemaking in place? Because there's a lot of, I don't want to say political jockeying. That's not really what these agencies do, to their credit, but there is a lot of uncertainty as to which agency is actually supposed to be controlling here. And one of the things that I've always harped upon is the administration has in its guidance and in Project Crypto and in the White House statement that they issued, right after Election Day, it was, no, SEC, the CFTC is going to be handling all these things now. And that's great, except the CFTC has, I don't have it in front of me, but 700 employees, whereas the SEC has over 4,000. So that's a wide gulf. Is it purposefully trying to say, okay, CFTC, with your lesser, staffed body, you're going to be taking control of all these things? I don't think it's that nefarious, but it's just curious to me. So I wonder how long until we actually get something tangible that we can sink our teeth into here.
Well, what do you think if you had to take a bet, over, under 6 months, which way are you going?
I mean, anything government related, only a fool would take under 6 months. That's just my personal view. So I'm definitely going to say over. You have cross agency rulemaking. That means multiple committees, back and forth, recess, elections are coming up, even an off year. That's still something that drives a lot of focus. You have harmonizing venue and product definitions, capital versus margin, DeFi safe harbors. You have all these things that go into rulemaking. It's not something that happens very quickly. I mean, I wonder historically what the fastest rulemaking ever was.
That's a good question. I mean, I would say though, and I agree with you, right? Government's very slow. Here, one thing we noticed, right? There's SEC has a chair, the CFTC does not, and we'll preview that in our next topic. But it still is a public joint statement. There's been not just a roundtable announced in September, and that's coming up very soon, but there's been a series of roundtables that have already happened. And they've also just signaled that they're going to review these filings pretty quickly. And I think that's going to be, the notice of proposed rulemaking is going to come out. I would assume it's going to follow pretty shortly. I would be surprised if it went the full 6 months, even though I think you would normally anticipate that. But we'll see what happens. We can put, what's the currency du jour of block and order wagers? Like, what do we even have at stake here?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, we can always make the $1 bet like in trading places.
One,
$1.
one USDC.
Yeah. One USDC would make more sense. Not one Bitcoin. I don't think either of us want to take that bet. Sorry.
We could do a Solana. Maybe that makes more sense.
That's fair. I could agree to that, I think.
Here, $1.
Well, then turning to our next topic, which I previewed a little bit, is the idea that the CFTC, here we are, September, we're almost a year into the first year of the administration, and we still don't have a chair. And the SEC can kind of see is like kind of dragging the CFTC in its chairless form, like, hey, let's do a joint statement. You don't got a chair, we do. Let's make some stuff get done. But Brian Quintenz was nominated. He had a hearing in June. Subsequent committee votes were yanked twice, including at the White House request, leaving the agency basically in limbo. Meanwhile, Carolyn Pham, who has been acting chair and very crypto forward, including pushing a quote unquote crypto sprint, has been very active. So what do you think, Kyle? What's going on here?
Tough to say. There have been a lot of reports about the Winklevoss twins making a phone call and expressing their less than thrilled reaction to him. I can't certify that that's accurate or what's behind that necessarily, but surely they are very influential in the space and they do have the administration's ear, as it were. So that could go into it. There's also the thinking, right or wrong, that when you have an interim chair of one of these regulatory agencies, it's much easier for them to be removed by the current president as opposed to a full-time chair, which there's a little bit more rigmarole that goes through, or typically is in typical times, although nowadays, who knows? I guess the next question would be, is this good or bad for the agency in general? Because you have effectively a leaderless organization. I know Carolyn Pham is there and she's doing a great job, but she is an interim. And when you're an interim, you're not going to have the full breadth of authority that you would otherwise have if you went through the full confirmation process and were approved. So I don't know if this is good or bad. What do you think about that?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because I do think, it's something you've seen with this administration, not just in CFTC instance, but the idea that instead of appointing a full-time committee, Senate approved leader, leaving an acting person in the leadership role actually allows the administration to exert more control over them, because it's like, well, you're acting chair, so if you don't like what you're doing, we'll just yank you out.
Right.
And it gives them more of a say in how the administration is and how the agency is run. But it seems like this is kind of an end around the proper functioning of what should be a very important regulator in the space, and a regulator that you want, coming to bear and having a real voice in not just coordination with the SEC and the CFTC, but also in the Senate and the House are proposing different market structure legislations, which are going to significantly impact how the CFTC is going to function, presumably for decades. So you'd think having like a real invested leader, Brian Quintenz was at A16Z, was very involved in their policy efforts, knows a ton about what's going on, and presumably would have a lot to say, but just isn't a voice in the conversation because he's not approved.
Moish, are you intimating that the administration wants to put in a yes man into a very important regulatory agency? Do you want to step on that grenade?
I would never say that, Kyle.
No, never. We would never
Never,
impugn the integrity of our
never.
administration.
That's right.
Well, next up, NASDAQ has asked the SEC to permit an option to trade tokenized equities alongside its traditional stocks that it's done for years with equal execution priority. DTC would handle post-trade with full shareholder rights that flow with the token. Moish, there's been a lot of talk about tokenized real estate, tokenized stocks, tokenize this, tokenize my computer, tokenize everything that I'm wearing. So when we get down to it, I personally think that a lot of people, it's the thing du jour. It's today's NFTs, today's DAOs. It's a Beanie Baby, whatever you want to call it. Is this the wave of the future? Is what NASDAQ is doing here good overall? You don't have to get too specific about it, but is this a good thing? And do people really understand what tokenizing means?
All right. Let me take those differently. I think yes, it is very good. And no, I don't think anyone understands what tokenizing means. I mean, certainly people in the industry that are working on these things, at least some of them understand. But I think when you talk about, what does it mean to tokenize real world assets, tokenize intellectual property, to tokenize, shareholder rights, which is what stocks are, the implications of that I think are difficult to understand. And I think the potential impact is significant and frankly really cool. I think the idea, and this is what we've talked about, is you can tokenize lots of things, but people are scared to actually tokenize real securities because those are
Right.
securities and you have to comply with securities laws. That's very onerous and there's no way to trade these things in the public markets, which is ultimately people want to do with their securities. Like the highest and best use of a security is it's publicly traded and it's a Fortune 50 company and there's infinite liquidity and you have cap tables and voting and ownership. It's all just taken care of. Nobody even thinks about, the Apple shareholders. They just vote and it just happens. And whatever they vote, like that's carried through. And if management screws up, it gets fixed because it's an important company and everyone pays attention. And none of that exists, right, for any tokenized stocks because it's not there. So I think the idea that we're going to, upgrade the financial system, which I think is really the goal here, is to make, things like T+2 is now T+1, like instant settlement,
Yep.
all these things. Like if we're going to clean up the way the financial system works, like this has to be the way that it happens. And if it can tie natively into crypto rails, like that's what we're trying to do here. That's the whole like legal yellow brick road we're trying to build, right?
Absolutely. And perfectly said. I completely agree with you about updating the financial system. It's been top of mind for the administration. It's something that RFK Jr. talked about when we saw him in Nashville last year, when he was at the Bitcoin conference. And yeah, absolutely. We are working within an arcane system in some ways with some of these transfer agents. It's very slow to get shares moved from point A to point B in the public market. Very, very difficult, very onerous. It could be very expensive too. It's just the legal rigmarole you have to jump through. And we're lawyers. I mean, I've done it. It sucks. And I wouldn't wish it upon anybody. So if you can have a system where in order to buy stock or get a stop legend removed or whatever it may be, that you can do that on chain and it happens instantaneous, it's an extension of the thing that I've always talked about when people ask me, what is the purpose of this kind of new technology? And the example I always give is if I'm representing a company that's based in California and they're buying something from France and they initiate a wire on Friday afternoon, well, guess what? That money's not going to get there till Monday. And that is a harrowing 72 hours for everyone involved. You put these things on chain, that problem goes away. This is an extension of that. And for that, I think it's great. Now, tokenization is not this great panacea that everybody likes to make it out to be. It doesn't automatically mean that people that have lesser assets can now participate in real estate syndications. All it says is that instead of you getting a physical certificate for your equity, you're just going to get a token, which is great. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but that's all it is. And I think it's important for us.
Yeah, but you can't even, like, no one even, if you asked your broker for a physical security, you couldn't get one now anyways. It's already digital.
I mean, you can get one, but
I don't think you can anymore. I think they're gone.
I don't
Like
know
if you have one, you can trade it in,
yeah.
but I don't think you can get one anymore.
But you still have
I
to
don't know.
go through the
Prove me
same
wrong.
process.
Again, block and order listeners, prove me wrong.
It's been so long since I've done it, and I don't do public company work anymore. But even if it's fine, even if it's a digital certificate, you still have to go through the transfer agent. They treat it as if it's still a
Yes.
physical thing that exists in the world, which makes it even dumber that they still do that.
100% the stupidest thing. It's a vestige of a system that doesn't exist anymore. So let's just put it on the new system.
Oh
That's a little.
goodness, yeah.
Oh my
All right.
gosh.
Well, all in all, this is great.
Yeah. Yeah, but you seem more. I mean, I think that's right. You seem more skeptical about the near term, um, like how much of this is really going to happen, how much of it's really vaporware until we get 5-10 years out. I don't completely disagree with that too. We'll see how quickly this moves.
We'll see.
All right, our next topic is the OCC. Kyle, pop quiz. What does the OCC stand for?
I actually don't know.
I believe it's the Office
Of the
of the
control.
Comptroller of the Currency.
Wow, I learned something today. How about that? Just another alphabet soup.
Office
See, I
of
mentioned
the
it in the lead-in.
Comptroller of
Little
the
did I
Currency.
know.
Division of the U.S. Treasury. Man, what a name!
It just
I think
rolls
they would
right
have come
off
up with
the
something a
tongue.
little like catchier by now.
It's-
Anyways, they've issued a new depoliticizing, debanking guidance, which is intended to take the politics out of debanking and take the discretion away from banks to, and presumably the government from forcing banks to debank people for political viewpoints that they disagree with. So the OCC, I'm not even gonna, who knows what they're called.
You down with OCC? Yeah, you know me,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, you know me. Will consider a bank's past record and current policies on politicized unlawful debanking when reviewing licensing applications and when assessing their performance. It also updates intake for BSA and AML oversight. So, Kyle, what do you think? Do you think that the OCC is going to be able to step in here and take the politics away from banking?
I almost think this is the opposite of that. I think that with the stance they're taking, they're effectively legitimizing the practice that the administration has openly said they're going to implement, which is, oh, you're a bank and you wouldn't lend to a gun manufacturer? Well, guess what? We're going to look at your charter and we're going to look at your capital requirements. And they openly have said that. And I think that this, the OCC statement here is effectively saying was like, well, we're going to take that into consideration because we have to. And now you're going to see a deepening of that scrutiny. It's, oh, well, you not only did you not lend to these gun manufacturers, but you lent to this group and that group and these people over here that we don't like. Well, we're going to look at your bank charter and consider revoking it. I mean, you see this all the time on Truth Social about the government threatening people for these kinds of things.
Yeah.
And now you have a supposed neutral organization that serves within the Department of Treasury saying these things. I don't know, man. I don't mean to be Orwellian about this, but I don't like this.
Yeah, it's a good point, right? And it's almost like by trying to solve the problem that they see, they're exaggerating the problem because now they are saying your past record of how political you were is now relevant in assessing the going forward viewpoint. So I am concerned, right? And this isn't the only context about this yo-yo of, from one administration to the other. Yes, you're favoring this group. No, you're favoring that group, and it's going to swing back and forth.
Right.
And so now if the analysis is of how good or bad of a bank you are is your past record on politicized or unlawful debanking, then whatever you do, whichever administration you favor, you're in trouble. So maybe the answer is, well, people are just going to not do what the administration wants them to do. I don't think that's realistic.
Oof, I don't know. I mean, this is a classic regulation for thee, but not for me. And not to be, one side of the aisle versus the other. You and I were, on record repeatedly saying how we hated Operation Choke Point 2.0 and the Biden era rules that they were, just hammering banks and other organizations over the head. This is just the same thing, just on the opposite side of the aisle. And I don't like it any more than I didn't like it then.
Well, at least the intent is to depoliticize debanking, right? which I don't think that was
I
the
suppose.
choke point intent, but I think the heart's in the right place to some degree. It's just, I don't know if this is the right way to do it.
Guess we'll find out when
We'll
the
find out.
dust settles. All right, next up on the order, Anthropic, the Anthropic authors case. At a September 8th hearing, Judge William Alsup declined to grant preliminary approval, for now, of the proposed $1.5 billion class settlement with book authors, blasting it as a, quote, nowhere close to complete, end quote, and demanding a finalized list of covered works plus a clear claims notice process, including rules for co-owners. He set a near-term deadline and warned against forcing a deal down the throats of authors. A little bit of background, Anthropic, which incidentally just closed a $13 billion Series F round. You don't see a lot of those.
I think the valuation was like $180 billion. Like, it's a company that didn't exist 3 years ago.
It's
awesome.
Magic money, man. The power of internet money. In June of earlier this year, the summary judgment was entered, and the same judge held that training LLMs on lawfully acquired books is fair use, quote, exceedingly transformative. But he also said that building and keeping a central library of printed books is not. The issue would proceed towards trial.
Pirated books.
Pirated books, excuse me. He did not decide whether LLM outputs infringe upon these rights. And then last week, there was a settlement announcement where the parties unveiled this $1.5 billion proposal with roughly $3,000 per covered book. And there's about 465,000 works at this stage. It's a lot of money. Another relief.
A lot of books. It's a lot of money.
Yeah. So it still needs court approval. But Moish, this is right up your alley. These copyright cases. Tell us what you think about this. I'm dying to know.
Yeah, I mean, we previously blogged this decision, and I think this is probably the right decision. I've always thought that training LLMs with books is just a transformative fair use, and the judge held that. There was another decision that was issued on the same time that held the same way. But the keeping a library of pirated books and using those to train might not be, and this was a potential liability for Anthropic or anyone else. I think Meta also had a similar decision that they had done some training with allegedly pirated books, and that this was a potential liability for trial where they could really get dinged, and the potential damages were massive just because of the massive scale of content and obviously the massive amount of money these companies have raised. And so I think the idea here from Anthropic's perspective was to basically cap their liability by saying, all right, we're going to pay out for past alleged piracy infringement by training by paying this $1.5 billion. And that's a lot of money. It's $3,000 a book. It's pretty cool. The judge just stepped in and said, no, I get to vet this. This doesn't make sense to me. And I think that's right. I think the judge is stepping in and saying, I don't understand what's happening here. This is this weird putative class. I guess and there's all these other cases that are pending. And so I think the judge is saying we need to really clearly define which works are covered and how we have a claims process and how we make sense of this. And I think that makes sense.
But does this slow things down? How do you reconcile, this sort of ownership question? Do authors have to opt in? How does this practically work going forward?
I don't know enough about what sort of claims process is contemplated and how they're going to get opt in or opt out of the authors and who's part of the class already and who's not. Yeah. I just don't know enough about how this particular litigation works. But I think it should be really clear. I think there should be a process. I think there's over 50 pending AI IP infringement class suits now. You can check Ed Lee, who was prior guest of the show, who's tracking all of them. Yeah, I mean, it is slow. Litigation's slow. AI is fast, and litigation with AI doesn't really mix because it's too fast for anyone to keep up. But that's the process, and it has to be followed. And I think ultimately, I think what Judge Alsup is doing here in requiring that this be more clearly explained to the court, and so everyone, not just the class, but the general public and the other judges watching this litigation with pending litigation in their courts, like, know what's happening over on this side of the fence. To me, that seems like judicial efficiency, even if it's a little bit slower.
You've heard me catastrophize about AI on prior episodes, somewhat to, joking effect, but I would give a shout out to my father, who would just love watching the sort of spread of these AI cases and seeing just new technologies impact things that have been around for decades or even centuries in some cases. It's really cool. He was a real lawyer's lawyer, and I think he would get a real kick out of this kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, the part that does make me a little bit uncomfortable is like what happens after this. Like, even for Anthropic, it doesn't
Right.
solve, like, all right, they're still training stuff now.
Right.
All these other AI companies are doing just constant training. I'm sure a lot of them are, I'm not sure. I assume a lot of them
Yeah.
are sourcing their training materials in like less than licensed ways.
Yeah.
I think this also sets a big precedent for, authors and other IP owners to say, we now demand license fees. So this isn't quite that, because it's not quite a license fee for the LLM training, which is still fair use according to the decision, but they are getting a payout.
Yeah.
Right.
It's getting there. Yeah. That's really,
Yeah.
really cool
Once the
stuff.
judge
Really,
approves it.
really interesting. Yeah. Well, last up, we have the Genius Act, which has been passed and is going to become law. Now following it up is the Clarity Act. And because the Clarity Act has passed the House and is now awaiting passage in the Senate, turns out that the Republicans need the Democrats on their side after all to pass this legislation. So earlier today, who would have guessed? Oh my God, what are the odds? Politics and government trying to function. So Senate Democrats earlier today recently released their 7 points that they want addressed in the Clarity Act in order to get their approval. And some of those points are, they want spot market oversight, which is kind of addressed, and just to backtrack a little bit, we've talked about the Clarity Act and it's very definitional, and it's not necessarily this sort of sea change regulation. It's a great step in the right direction, though. So what the Democrats are doing is trying to get a little bit more clarity on the Clarity Act. See what I did there?
Nice.
So spot market oversight.
That's a genius point you just made.
Oh, snap. Look at us. We're on fire here.
Yeah.
They want to define the SEC scope of its authority along with the CFTC. They want to have ethics and corruption planks to have limits on what people can and can't do. We'll touch upon that in a second. And of course, resourcing and bipartisanship requirements, to name a few. So Moish, without delving too into the minutia of this, how do you feel about what the Senate Democrats are proposing here, and do you think that this will get solved before the end of this upcoming session?
Yeah, I to take the last question first, I've been skeptical that market structure is going to get solved before midterms. It seems like there's too many different people that want too many different things. There's not any unified vision or voice. That the Democrats have now, brought in, some new concepts, including the corruption, abuse prevention, limits on officials' crypto dealings, things of that nature, which are probably fairly targeting some of the more public officials that are involved in crypto. But I don't think that's a recipe to actually getting a bill signed.
Yeah, I agree.
So I mean that's the reality. I think and then like also just like the AML stuff, the KYC stuff, the financial privacy stuff, I think it's just like, these are issues where I don't think there's really a clear vision as to how it gets solved in a bipartisan way. Maybe I'm wrong. I just haven't really seen it. And so I'm just skeptical that this is going to be the path. I mean, we got the Genius Act done. I think that was a good success. We got the House Fit 21 that passed the House and got stuck in the Senate. And now the Senate's kind of meandering around, and like, you're seeing it now, right? There's just not a great, like, okay, like where do we go now? Right. So I guess we'll see if we can rally around some of the Democratic pushback and come out with a with a bill that's going to make sense. I just don't. I haven't seen it in a way that makes me optimistic that that's going to happen.
Yeah, I think you hit some really salient points there, and I largely agree with everything you said, and specifically about the ethics and corruption point. We were talking about this a little bit before the show, before we were recording. Obviously, we need ethics and corruption guardrails, just like we need water to live. It's obvious. And when they mention Trump by name, listen, love him or hate him, you got to understand the political ramifications of that. And you have a Republican controlled Senate that anytime you go in there and say, anything negative about him, they're going to stop you in your tracks, even if they don't agree with you, because they know the political blowback that they will face. So I feel like the Democrats almost did this. I mean, are they doing it knowing that they're not going to agree to it, or do they put this forward and the Republicans say no, and Democrats can say, you guys want corruption, this is what you people are voting for? That didn't work in the last election cycle, and it's not going to work here. I don't love the idea of letting perfect be the enemy of the good. We're close here on getting something done, whether it's a panacea or not. We'll see. It's not, but who knows? But just to kill this thing by doing that, which they know will get shot down, just, I don't know, has me scratching my head a little bit. I don't know what they're.
Well, it's politics. I mean, that's what it is. They're saying, here is a political dog whistle that we can stand up and say,
yeah,
these people are corrupt, and they're corrupt because they're investing, running crypto companies, whatever it is. Let's go after them. And they're trying to earn brownie points with Democratic voters by doing that. And I agree with you. It didn't work in the last election. It's just, I don't think it's an issue that people really resonate with anymore. They're like, all right, he's corrupt. He runs a company with his kids. Like, who cares? Like that seemed to be the outcome in the last election. Now, maybe it's different now. Who knows? Maybe that's the place where they can earn some points. It didn't seem to work last time around. I'm not sure it's really going to work out the way that you just described.
Yeah.
I
don't know, man. I think I was 4 years old when I put my hand on the stove and it burned, and my mom said, don't ever do that again. And guess what? I haven't done it again. Maybe the Senate Democrats need to learn the same lesson.
Well, that's why they have 6-year terms.
Right. Well, I'm 46 and I'm holding on strong.
Yeah.
Well, that wraps it up for this edition of Block and Order. Very special thanks to producer Moish. Look at him wearing all these hats. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and follow us on all our different platforms where podcasts are available. If you have any topics you would like us to cover, if you have any questions, please drop a comment down below. We do read them all and take them all very seriously. Even the spam ones, which are obviously spam ones, we do get those.
Can you send money to my MetaMask? Yeah.
One of them asked me to reveal my seed phrase a couple times, and I kept saying no. And he's like, "Come on, I work with support." I was like, "No, appreciate you don't, but thanks, thanks, but no thanks."
If yes, a little nicer next time, he'll get you to reveal.
Maybe. Yeah. So while nothing that we say on Block and Order is meant to be legal and or financial advice, we do encourage everybody to not disclose your seed phrase to anybody. Nobody from Coinbase or any of the other exchanges will ever call you legitimately. If that happens, do not give them your seed phrase. That's the end of our legal advice for the show. Everything is meant for informational purposes only. And the fact that Moish and I may discuss specific assets is in no way, shape, or form meant to be construed as an endorsement of said assets. Please consult your own representatives if you're going to take the plunge down the rabbit hole. So on behalf of Moish Peltz, I'm Kyle Lawrence, signing off.
See you next time.